So this week on our how-to series we're going to have a look at cleanup crew. Now cleanup crew are very important in your aquarium because first of all it can stop a lot of problems with ammonia spikes and other issues. It will also mostly just reduce the amount of workload that you've got to do. If you had to go around and do all the jobs that they were doing for you, that would take you many hours a week. So for a relatively small cash investment you can save yourself quite a lot of time over the course of a year or two. So today we're going to look first of all at the three key components of your cleanup crew, and then we're going to look at some of the other species of inverts that you can have in your tank as well. So first of all we're going to take a look at Filtration snails. Okay, so Filtration snails are the most important part of your cleanup crew. They want to go in right at the start, as soon as the tank is cycled, and you want to make sure you have sufficient numbers of them. We recommend you have about one Filtration snail per 20 litres as a minimum. You can keep more than that if you want to. They're fairly easy to look after. In the wild they live on the mud flats. They're often called mud snails as well, or NASA snails. They live on the mud flats and they can sit there for days or even weeks at a time with just their snouts protruding from the sand or the mud. And when the tide brings up something dead onto the beach, like a dead crab or a bird or something like that, they'll then come out of the sand and quickly devour the body before the tide or currents take it away. So they can survive for many weeks without any food at all, but then when food appears they can eat an enormous amount in one go. And the more they eat, the faster they grow as well. They'll also reproduce in the aquarium, so you might get the odd extra little baby one. You're unlikely to get any big numbers of them, but you should get enough to replace natural attrition from old age and stuff. So Filtration snails will very quickly devour any uneaten food in the aquarium, especially useful for pieces that have drifted into inaccessible areas, such as behind rocks and small gaps and places like that. We normally get quite large Filtration snails, but we can also sometimes get dwarf ones as well. We're getting into smaller gaps, and it's worth having the odd one as a dwarf one, or just a juvenile of the adults, so they can get in places the other ones might struggle to get. So they're pretty good at getting most places, to be fair. They'll quickly hunt down and devour anything that's dead, but they won't touch anything that's alive. The only exception being if it's like a fish and it's bleeding heavily, but if the fish is doing that, it's unrecoverable usually anyway. They won't touch any of your corals. Completely reef safe. They're a great little addition to the tank. They're quite interesting to watch, and they do a massive amount of work for you. By devouring all the uneaten food, that stops that rotting down and creating nitrogen and phosphate, which we find algal problems. And also it just helps guard against ammonia spike. If the worst happens and you lose a fish or a big snail or something like that, you quickly devour within a few minutes, so you don't end up polluting the aquarium as well. The next most important part of your cleanup crew are your conchs. Now we do a variety of different conchs in store and often have 3 or 4 species here. But they form roughly into 2 groups. You get the conchs which go around predominantly on top of the sand bed, and they will also go up onto the rocks and maybe even glass a little bit. Like spider conchs and strawberry conchs, being strawberry is probably the most common one that you see. And they go around on top of the sand, suck the sand up, grind it, get all the algae off it, the bacteria off it, everything out, and spit it back out as pristine grains of sand. It helps keep the sand bed nice and clean. It also allows the water to percolate down through the sand bed to the deeper layers for better denitrification, and it just grinds away and keeps that sand in tip-top condition. Now you also get a second type of conchs like bullas and luhanas, and they'll bury around in the deeper layers of sand, so they'll work their way through, basically running around on your base glass and ensure those deeper layers are turned over so you don't get builds up of toxic gases or deep layers of sedimentation as well. As far as conchs go, we generally say on small conchs you want about 1 per 50 to 100 litres of tank volume. On larger conchs like spiders and things like that, about 1 per 100 to 200 litres tank volume. So in a typical sort of 200 litre tank, you'd want maybe 1 large conch, or sort of 2 or 3 little ones. And that will be enough to keep the sand in tip-top shape. The last part of your cleanup crew is your grazing snails. Now, unlike the other parts of the cleanup crew, the conchs and the cereus want to go in as soon as the tank is cycled, because there'll be food for them there right from the start. But with the grazing snails, you have to wait until a key part of the algae cycle is complete. They won't really eat diatoms or cyano. Conchs will deal with that, but snails really won't. You want to wait until either green plating algae is coming through onto your glass or your rocks, or you're getting the first signs of hair algae coming through. And that's the time to add your grazing snails early and get on top of it then. But you have to wait for that, otherwise there will be nothing for them to eat and you lose the snails. Now, predominantly we favour black trochus snails for grazers. They're very mobile, they're very strong, they tend not to get stuck very easily upside down like a lot of the other snails. But they're really good on hair algae, but they're less keen on some of the other algae types. So it's important when you're adding snails, although you want to be predominantly black trochus, to try and get as much variety of species of snail as you can. Different species of snail will target different types of algae, and so that avoids one type of algae getting ignored and being allowed to run rampant. Ideally you'd want 3 or 4 species of grazing snail in there, but the more you can get the better. If you can only get a couple, then get a couple, but if you've got the option of getting 8 or 9 or 10, get 8 or 9 or 10, even if it's only a single specimen of each. That'll make a huge difference. On grazing snails you want at least 1 per 20 litres of tank volume. If you've got quite a large volume of rock, or you're running on a system of quite high nutrient levels, then you may want to add more snails to keep on top of it. Now, while the conchs are very long-lived, and the cereus snails are almost self-repopulating, grazing snails will need topping up from time to time. Most grazing snails will only live around a year, and maybe a few months old when you purchase them. So it's worth getting quite a few initially, and then every 6 to 12 months topping up with a few extra snails, especially if a species becomes available that you haven't already got. Next we're going to take a little look at other inverts that you can put in as part of your cleanup crew as well. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the other inverts that you can put in as cleanup crew as well. So first of all, sea cucumbers are an option. They do a brilliant job of keeping the sand clean, and they will eat a little bit of algae off the glass often as well. But really I wouldn't bother with them in tanks under 500 litres. In a big tank they can do a brilliant job, but in a small tank they often go very large, and the death of one in a small tank can cause quite a lot of pollution issues. Starfish are also worth looking at. Things like blue linckias will grind the bacteria away from the surface of the rock, which allows more open pore structure within the rock for better denitrification. These days most people use a ceramic media or something like that for the bulk of their biological filtration, so they're more there for ornamental use than for general purpose. Sand slips and starfishes are quite good, and you can use those to supplement the conchs as well. I'd say a sand slip and starfish will do about the same job as a small conch, but they are a little bit trickier to keep, so in preference I'd go with conchs, but if you've got a large tank, the odd sand slips and starfish will help you out as well. Brittle stars are another one that you can look at. Again, this is probably one for the large aquarium. Small brittle stars will often come in on corals and populate within the tank. It's very unusual anyone really buys large brittle stars, but if you've got a very large system, it's something that's worth having a look at. Shrimps make pretty good cleanup crew. They won't eat a huge amount of food for their size, but they're colourful and they add a lot of interest. Bear in mind, some shrimps will get eaten by fish, depending on what fish you have, and they will also sometimes run across corals and irritate them a little bit. But they do add a lot of interest, and they're very good at snatching uneaten food particles out of the water column before it settles out and the cereus deal with it. So it's always nice to have a few shrimps in the tank anyway. Crabs fall into a couple of categories. You've got hermit crabs, which are generally pretty terrible in the main as cleanup crew. In very small tanks, barley red dwarf hermits do a pretty good job, especially if you've got a little hair algae problem, and especially in tanks that are too small for a tang or a large blenny to deal with it. And also you could look at Halloween hermits, which will quickly get on top of hair algae problems in a larger tank. Sea hares are a popular choice for cleanup crew, but they are very twitchy to keep, and if they release eggs, that can be toxic and can kill a lot of fish and corals, or if they die, they can release or get injured, they can release and die, which again can be very toxic, so they're generally best avoided. Another important part of the cleanup crew, especially in the older, more mature tank, is filtration of the water. So also look at things like porcelain crabs and tube worms, which will filter particles and sediment from the water, and they can actually make quite a big difference in improving water clarity. You can also do this with clams and oysters and things as well, but they are more difficult to keep, and again there are other ways of making water clearer using UV or ozone, quality carbon, quality floss, which is what we tend to rely on. So that's something worth bearing in mind as well. In a larger system where your tank is over 200 litres, you also want to be looking at fish as part of your cleanup crew as well. Sand sifting gobies, particularly chalk gobies, do an excellent job of turning over the sand bed, and I would look at adding those onto the conchas. You'd also ideally want wrassers for pest control, and I'd class them as part of the cleanup crew as well. They'll pick a little bit of food off the substrate, they help turn over the substrate a little bit, and they keep down nuisance pests like small bristleworms, flatworms and things like that. And the last part of your cleanup crew on the fish side of things would be grazing pressure from larger blennies like starry or algae blennies. Generally starry blennies make better grazers. And if your tank is big enough, you can be looking at the tangs. Now, bristletooth tang family, or this is a Tenachatus species, can be kept in tanks from just 200 litres. Any of the other tanks tanks that you're looking at, you want to be looking at 500 litres plus. And many tanks require 1,000 or even 2,000 litres. Also bear in mind that a lot of tanks are shoaling fish in the wild, and so that is something that you want to consider rather than having one of each type. Things like lipsticks and regal tanks can easily be kept in groups, and you get much better behaviour and colour from them. Bristletooth tanks can also be kept in groups, as long as they're all of a similar size and they all go in at the same time. So in summary, the key points for your cleanup crew is as soon as possible, get your Nacerius in, 1 snail per 20 litres as a minimum. And on your conchas, you want 1 per 50 to 100 litres or so as an absolute minimum. All your conchas, all your snails want to go in straight at the start. With grazing snails, you want about 1 per 20 litres, and they want to go in once the green algae start to come through. But also when you're talking about cleanup crew, don't forget to also look at the fish. You want fish for pest control, you want fish for sand sifting, and you want fish for additional grazing pressure. And it's very important that if you get all those 3 roles fulfilled on the invert side and all those 3 roles fulfilled on the fish side, it's going to save you a lot of work, you're going to have a better looking tank, and it's going to be a lot more successful hobby and a lot more pleasing for you. So thank you very much for watching this how-to, and stay tuned next week when we'll be covering another subject.